week 10 of the fantasy football season. And here's a few quarterbacks I would drop this week. The first guy, Aaron Rodgers of the Green Bay Packers. Aaron Rodgers, it's just been a down year here for the MVP last season for Rodgers. Lack of weapons, obviously. And this year was a prove a year to see if he could get the job done without Davante Adams. But obviously that hasn't been the case. And right now for fantasy football, he's a mediocre quarterback at best. Week 7 at Washington for Rodgers, 194 pass yards, 2 touchdowns. Week 8 at Buffalo, 203 pass yards, 2 touchdowns, an interception in that one. And then week 9 at Detroit, 291 pass yards, a touchdown, 3 interceptions, including 2 of them in the end zone, and 40 yards rushing. So right now, Rodgers, he's a little bit slow, I think, on reacting and throwing the football. And we saw it in that Detroit game. Those back in the day would have been 2 easy touchdowns for Rodgers, but his timing's off. He's not 100%, I think, as well here. And now with the lack of weapons, Allen Lazard, only really option on that team at wide receiver. Romeo Doubs, he's going to be out a while now with a high ankle sprain. He was emerging a little bit, was the rookie here. And right now with a tough matchup versus the Dallas Cowboys and the Tennessee Titans over the next couple weeks. He's a guy that you pretty much can't count on each and every week. And his ceiling this season's been 20 fantasy points. Besides that, he's hovering anywhere from 15 to 20 a week. But now with a lack of weapons and a tougher schedule coming up, I think it's time to drop Rodgers this week. The next quarterback is Matthew Stafford of Los Angeles Rams. So a lot of veterans this season here, they're just not getting the job done for fantasy football or their teams, obviously. So Matthew Stafford, the last few games, we've seen nothing from him really in fantasy football. Week 6 versus Carolina, 253 pass yards, a touchdown and an interception. Week 8 versus the Niners, 187 pass yards, a touchdown and a rushing TD. And then week 9 in Tampa Bay, 165 pass yards and a touchdown. So right now he's failed to reach 20 fantasy points or more, Matthew Stafford, since week 2. And right now, surprisingly, he's still owned in 68% of fantasy leagues. But if I'm a Stafford owner, it's time to cut him loose, I believe. There's better options on the wire like Jimmy Garoppolo, even a Daniel Jones for this week versus the Houston Texans. I would rather have than a Matthew Stafford, even in a decent matchup versus Arizona. But he's a guy we dropped this week. In the third and final quarterback is Russell Wilson of the Denver Broncos. So Russell Wilson, I've mentioned him many times on this drop list here. Wilson, I know he's had a couple decent games on and off this season, but another guy up there in age, maybe it's catching up to him. The timing's off, obviously, new team. He's not really getting the ball to anybody on the offense. Early in the season, him and Sutton were connecting, but now that just hasn't happened. So right now, the last few games here for Russ, week 5 versus Indianapolis, 274 pass yards, 2 went those, 22 yards rushing. Week 6 at the Chargers, 188 pass yards, a touchdown, and 23 rushing. Then week 7 sat out versus the Jets. And week 8 at Jacksonville, 252 pass yards, a touchdown in London, and an interception. So right now, week 10, not a great matchup at the Tennessee Titans, where, believe it or not, their defense is pretty stout. We saw them limit the Chiefs' offense to scoring a lot of touchdowns. And right here, I think Tennessee could have a decent game versus Wilson and the Broncos. So right now, Wilson's a guy not doing anything. This season, only 2 games with 20 or more fantasy points. And obviously, he's a quarterback I would drop this week. So that's a few quarterbacks I would drop here for week 10 of the fantasy football season.